The phone rang at 2:47 in the morning, and I knew before I answered that nothing good comes from calls at that hour. I'd been awake anyway, staring at the ceiling like I did most nights, my mind cycling through memories I couldn't quite shake and futures I couldn't quite imagine. The phone's shrill ring cut through the silence of my small house like a knife. I picked it up on the third ring, my voice rough from disuse. "Hello?" There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in 30 years but recognized immediately. Deep, gravelly, with that particular edge of authority that never quite fades even when the uniform comes off. "Mitchell, this is Gunnery Sergeant Raymond Tucker. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." My blood ran cold. Sergeant Tucker, my drill instructor from basic training in 1992. The man who'd broken me down and built me back up, who'd screamed in my face until I understood what it meant to be a Marine, who I hadn't spoken to or thought about in 3 decades. "Sergeant Tucker," I managed, my mind racing. "How did you?" I said, "Listen, Mitchell, I don't have much time and what I'm about to ask you is going to sound insane, but I need you to trust me the way you trusted me when you were 18 years old and didn't know your ass from your elbow." I sat up straighter on my couch, old training kicking in despite the years. "When Sergeant Tucker gave an order, you followed it. Some things apparently never changed." "I'm listening, sir." "Good. I'm dying, Mitchell. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Doctors gave me 2 weeks, maybe 3. That's not why I'm calling, but you need to understand the urgency." He paused, and I could hear him breathing heavily, each breath seeming to cost him effort. "I'm calling because I made a promise 30 years ago, and I need your help to keep it before I run out of time." My mind was reeling. "What kind of promise? Do you remember Private Danny Cordero from your platoon at Paris Island?" The name hit me like a physical blow. Danny Cordero. Of course I remembered him. Small kid from New Mexico, maybe 5'6" and barely made weight requirements. Got recycled twice during training because he couldn't pass the obstacle course. The platoon's permanent struggler, the one we all had to carry through qualifying exercises. "I remember," I said quietly. "He washed out during the crucible, didn't he? Couldn't complete the final march. That's the official record, yes. That's what everyone believes." Tucker's voice dropped lower. "But that's not what actually happened, and I need you to know the truth. More importantly, I need you to help me set something right that I should have fixed 30 years ago." But nothing could have prepared me for what he said next. "Danny Cordero didn't wash out, Mitchell. He died during the crucible, and I covered it up." The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. I'd been there, marched the crucible with the rest of my platoon. If someone had died, we would have known. The entire base would have known. "That's not possible," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "I was there. We all were. Nobody died. You were there for the first 36 hours. Then your group got separated during the night navigation exercise. You, Thompson, Rodriguez, and Williams got sent on a different route because of the size of the platoon. You remember that?" I did remember. 4 of us had been pulled aside, told we'd be doing an alternate route to avoid overcrowding on the main trail. At the time it had seemed like standard operating procedure. "Danny was with the main group," Tucker continued. "At hour 42 during the climb over the 30-foot tower obstacle, he fell, landed wrong, broke his neck, was dead before the corpsman got to him." My hands were shaking. I set down the phone and put it on speaker, needing both hands free to process what I was hearing. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Why me?" "Because Danny made me promise something before he died, and you're the only one who can help me keep that promise." Tucker's breathing was getting worse, more labored. "But first you need to understand what happened, why I covered it up, why I've carried this for 30 years. I waited, my heart pounding as he gathered himself to continue. "When Danny fell, I was the ranking NCO on site. The crucible was almost over, just a few more hours until completion. I had a decision to make. Report the death, trigger a full investigation, shut down the entire exercise, traumatize 73 recruits who just spent 3 days pushing themselves to their absolute limits. Or cover it up," I finished, understanding dawning. I told myself I was protecting the other recruits, that Danny wouldn't want his death to ruin the crucible for everyone else, that he'd want his platoon to earn the title despite what happened. Tucker's voice was thick with emotion, but the truth is, I was protecting myself. I was 6 months from retirement. A death during the crucible would have meant investigations, inquiries, possibly criminal charges if they decided I'd been negligent. My pension, my reputation, everything I'd built over 25 years could have been destroyed. "What did you do with his body?" "I staged it, made it look like he disappeared during the night navigation. Filed a report saying he'd gone AWOL, couldn't handle the pressure, deserted his platoon. By the time you 4 came back from the alternate route, Danny was already listed as a deserter. The official story was that he'd been seen walking toward the base perimeter, presumably heading for the highway. The magnitude of what Tucker was describing was staggering, but his family was told he'd quit, couldn't hack it, brought shame to himself and the Corps. His father, who'd been a Marine himself, disowned him, never spoke to or about Danny again. His mother tried to find him for years, filed missing person reports, hired investigators. But there was no one to find because her son was buried in an unmarked grave in a military cemetery under a false name. I felt sick. Jesus Christ. I falsified records, Mitchell, forged documents, created a paper trail showing Danny had been transferred to admin hold before disappearing. I had help, a corpsman who owed me favors, a clerk who asked no questions. We made Danny Cordero cease to exist as a Marine recruit and reappear as a John Doe casualty from an unrelated training accident at a different base. Tucker paused, coughing violently. When he spoke again, his voice was weaker. But before Danny died, in those few minutes while we waited for the corpsman who I knew couldn't save him, he asked me to do something. He was scared, in pain, knew he was dying. And he asked me to make sure his mother knew he didn't quit, that he tried his hardest, that he didn't bring shame on the family. Now I understood why Tucker was calling me. You want me to tell his mother the truth, not just tell her. I want you to help me give her proof. Evidence that Danny died serving, not deserting. Evidence that her son was a Marine in everything but the official record. Tucker's voice strengthened slightly. I kept something. Something I should have destroyed but couldn't. Danny's dog tags. The real ones, with his actual information. I've carried them for 30 years, waiting for the courage to do the right thing. And now I'm out of time. Where are you? I asked, already knowing I was going to do whatever he asked. Hospice, in San Diego. I need you to come here, Mitchell. I need to give you the dog tags, tell you everything you'll need to know to find Danny's mother, and make this right. But more than that, I need you to understand why I chose you. Why did you choose me? Because you were the only one in that platoon who was kind to Danny. The only one who didn't mock him for struggling, who helped him through exercises without making him feel worthless. You were an 18-year-old kid, but you had more integrity than I did as a 25-year veteran. Tucker's voice cracked. I need someone who'll treat this with the respect it deserves, who'll honor Danny's memory properly. And despite everything, despite the terrible thing I did, I trust you to be that person. I looked at the clock. 2:53 a.m. My job as a warehouse supervisor started at 6. I had responsibilities, a routine, a quiet life I'd carefully constructed over the decades since leaving the Marines. I'll be there by tomorrow afternoon, I heard myself say. Thank you, Mitchell. There's more I need to tell you. Things about Danny, about that night, about what really happened. Things you'll need to know to understand the full story. He coughed again, longer this time, but not over the phone. When you get here, I'll tell you everything. Every detail I've kept buried for 3 decades. Sergeant Tucker, one question before you hang up. Yes? Why now? You've had 30 years. Why wait until you're dying? The silence stretched for so long I thought he might have passed out or ended the call. Then, finally, he spoke. Because I'm a coward, Mitchell. I've always been a coward. It took dying to give me the courage I should have had when I was alive. His breathing was ragged now. Get here soon. I have maybe a week left and I need to make sure you understand everything before I go. Danny deserves that. His mother deserves that. And I need to die knowing I finally did one thing right. The line went dead. I sat there in my living room, phone still on speaker, processing what had just happened. Sergeant Tucker, Danny Cordero, a 30-year-old cover-up, a dying man's confession, a promise to a recruit who died trying to earn his title. I pulled up my laptop and started looking for flights to San Diego. But first I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to my closet and pulled out the box I kept on the top shelf, my Marine Corps memories, carefully packed away because looking at them hurt in ways I couldn't quite articulate. Photos from basic training, letters from that time, my dress blues, preserved in plastic. And there, in a photo from week 8 of basic training, I found him, Danny Cordero. Small, young, looking scared but determined, standing in formation, trying so hard to measure up. I stared at that photo for a long time, remembering the kid who'd struggled through every exercise, who'd been recycled twice, who'd pushed himself to exhaustion trying to keep up with bigger, stronger recruits, who I'd helped whenever the drill instructors weren't looking, slipping him tips on how to improve his form, sharing my rations when he couldn't finish his meals. I'd believed for 30 years that Danny had quit, had walked away from the title he'd fought so hard to earn, had disappointed himself and his family, and I judged him for it, just a little, even while telling myself everyone has their breaking point. But he hadn't quit. He died trying, and his sacrifice had been erased to protect a drill instructor's pension. The flight to San Diego left at 11 a.m. I packed a small bag, called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, and tried to sleep for a few hours, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept cycling back to Tucker's words, to Danny's face in that photo, to the weight of a 30-year-old lie finally coming to light. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and drove to the airport early. Better to wait there than pace around my house, questions multiplying faster than answers. The hospice facility was on the outskirts of San Diego, a low, sprawling building designed to be comfortable for people in their final days. I arrived at 3:30 p.m., was directed to Sergeant Tucker's room by a kind nurse who looked at me with the particular sadness reserved for visitors to the dying. Tucker looked nothing like the imposing figure I remembered. The man in the hospital bed was skeletal, his skin gray and papery, his breathing assisted by oxygen. But his eyes, when they focused on me, still carried that sharp intelligence I remembered. "Mitchell, you came." His voice was barely a whisper. "Of course, sir." I moved a chair next to his bed and sat down. "I'm here, I'm listening." Tucker reached for something on his bedside table, his movements slow and painful. He held up a small cloth bag, the kind used for jewelry or small valuables. "Danny's dog tags. I've kept them with me for 30 years. Moved them from base to base, house to house, never letting them out of my sight. My penance, my reminder of what I did." He handed me the bag, and I opened it carefully. Inside were 2 dog tags on a chain, tarnished with age but still legible. Cordero, Daniel J. Blood type, social security number, religious preference, physical proof that Danny Cordero had been a Marine recruit, not a deserter. "There's more," Tucker said, gesturing weakly to a folder on the table. "I kept copies of everything. The real accident report I should have filed, photos of the accident scene I took before staging the desertion, the corpsman's actual notes before I had him falsify them. Everything you'll need to prove what really happened." But his expression suggested there was something worse coming. "Mitchell, I need to tell you the rest, the part that's haunted me more than the cover-up itself." Tucker's eyes filled with tears. "Danny didn't fall accidentally. He jumped." The words didn't register at first. "What?" "He jumped from that tower. Deliberately. I saw it happen. He climbed to the top, stood there for a moment looking down, and then he jumped. Not fell. Jumped." My mind rejected the information. "That doesn't make sense." "Why would? Because he couldn't take it anymore. The physical demands, the constant recycling, the shame of being the platoon's weak link, the knowledge that his father, who'd been a decorated Marine, was watching his son fail again and again." Tucker's voice was steady despite the tears running down his face. "I'd been too hard on him, Mitchell. I knew he was struggling, knew he was at his breaking point, but I kept pushing, kept telling him to dig deeper, find his strength, overcome his weakness, and he tried. God, he tried so hard. The tragedy was deepening with every revelation. But on that tower, at hour 42 of the Crucible, after 3 days of pushing himself beyond his limits, after being recycled twice, after carrying the weight of his father's expectations and the Corps' standards, and his own desperate desire to measure up, he broke. And instead of failing one more time, instead of being recycled again or washing out officially, he chose to end it. You're telling me Danny committed suicide? I'm telling you Danny Cordero died because the system broke him, and I was the hand that turned the screws. His death wasn't an accident. It was a failure, my failure, dressed up as an accident, and then covered up as a desertion." Tucker gripped my hand with surprising strength. "That's why I need you to tell his mother the truth. Not just that he died, but that he died trying. That every ounce of strength he had went into trying to be a Marine. That he didn't quit. He fought until there was nothing left to fight with." I sat there absorbing the magnitude of what Tucker was confessing. Not just a cover-up, but a suicide. Not just a lie, but a tragedy that could have been prevented. "His mother," I said. "Where is she?" "Still alive. Still in New Mexico, in the same house Danny grew up in. I've kept track of her over the years, watched from a distance as she aged, as she never stopped hoping her son might come home." Tucker's breathing was getting worse. "Her name is Carmen Cordero. She's 76 years old, and she deserves to know that her son loved her, tried his hardest, and didn't abandon his family. What about his father? Died 15 years ago. Heart attack. Went to his grave believing his son was a coward and a deserter. That's on me too. I could have told the truth anytime, could have saved that family from 30 years of false shame, but I chose my pension over their peace." Tucker's grip on my hand tightened. "But Carmen is still here. I can still give her this. And I need you to be the one to do it." "Why me? Why not go yourself? Tell her directly. Look at me, Mitchell. I've got days left, maybe a week. I can't travel, can barely stay conscious for more than an hour at a time. But more than that, I don't deserve to be the one. I don't deserve to see her face when she learns the truth, to receive whatever forgiveness or condemnation she might offer. That's not for me. I gave up that right when I chose to cover this up." He released my hand and gestured to the folder again. "Everything's in there. Carmen's address, phone number, the evidence. A letter I wrote explaining everything, though you don't have to give it to her if you think it's better coming from you in person. And one more thing." Tucker reached under his pillow and pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. "Danny wrote this the night before the Crucible started. It's a letter to his mother, just in case. Standard procedure. Lots of recruits write them. Most never need them. I was supposed to mail it if anything happened to him. Instead, I kept it. Another piece of evidence I should have destroyed but couldn't." I took the letter, feeling its weight. 30 years old, never read by the person it was meant for. "One last thing, Mitchell. When you tell Carmen, when you give her the evidence and the dog tags in Danny's letter, I need you to tell her something from me." "What?" "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I was a coward who valued my career over her son's memory. Tell her I robbed her of 30 years of proper mourning, 30 years of honoring her son correctly. Tell her that I died with this guilt eating me alive, and that nothing, not her forgiveness, not confession, not anything can make up for what I took from her and Danny. Tucker's breathing was labored now, his strength clearly failing. And Mitchell, one more thing. This might be selfish, but I need to know. After you tell her, after she knows the truth, will you call me? Will you tell me how she responded? I need to know, before I die, whether this confession brought her any peace or just more pain. I'll call you, I promised. Whatever happens, however she responds, I'll make sure you know. Thank you. Tucker closed his eyes, exhausted. The nurse will give you my contact information. Go soon. Don't wait like I did. Every day Carmen doesn't know the truth is another day of unnecessary suffering. I stood to leave, but Tucker's voice stopped me. Mitchell, one last question. Do you think I'm going to hell for this? I looked at this dying man, this decorated Marine, who'd made a terrible choice and spent 30 years carrying the weight of it, who'd valued his career over a young man's memory and a mother's peace, who'd finally found the courage to tell the truth only when death forced his hand. I don't know, sir, but I think Danny might forgive you. He seemed like that kind of kid. Tucker smiled sadly. I hope you're right. But I wouldn't, if I were him, and I'm not sure I deserve it either way. I left the hospice with a folder of evidence, a bag containing dog tags, and a 30-year-old letter, headed for New Mexico to tell a mother that her son had been dead for 3 decades while she'd spent every day hoping he'd come home. The weight of it was crushing. But Danny Cordero deserved the truth. Carmen Cordero deserved the truth. And Sergeant Tucker, despite everything, deserved the chance to die having finally done the right thing, even if it came 30 years too late. I rented a car and started driving toward New Mexico, toward a conversation I had no idea how to begin, carrying news that would shatter a mother's world while finally, maybe, giving her the peace of knowing her son hadn't abandoned her. The road stretched out ahead of me, and I had 18 hours to figure out how to tell a 76-year-old woman that her son had been dead for 30 years, that he died trying to make her proud, and that the man who could have told her the truth decades ago had chosen his career instead. Some missions, I realized, were harder than anything they taught you in basic training. This was going to be one of them.